Kinsale Drake, who is magnificent. We had the pleasure of publishing her just a couple of months ago, and her poems were so well received. Um, Her interview, like interviewing her, touched me so deeply. Um, it's Thank you, Kinsale, for doing this. And Major, of course, we all know how busy you are. Um, and here are two people who are doing so much for the poetry community for so long now. It's just such a blessing that they're here, really. Um, I'm not going to go on, and I'm just going to let um, Major take her breath away as he'd like to read first. Major, are you ready?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this reading. Forgive the tie. Today was full of meetings that required a suit, but I'm very, very happy to read with Kinsale Drake, an immensely talented, emergent poet, and very happy to to launch a really important book in my mind. I called it a generational book, and I really feel as though that is really deserving. I'm going to just read four poems and let Kinsale take over. We are both here in Nashville, Music City, both coming from classes. So this is a wonderful capstone to a day of conversations. This is a poem titled Lovesick. It's not February or anywhere near Valentine, but I think it's important to strike a note of of amore, love, lovesick. First, you will need to cross some dark threshold. I suggest lying on your back in a pasture of cut ryegrass or in a city park. I suggest planting an arm behind your head. You have inherited acres of a night sky, and she is your aurora borealis. And though you cannot see the world's wild shadows, here she will be. Nacreous grace wavering in bands of blue-green light, ribbons of gold neon swimming beneath skin. You will want to write a long letter to your dead. You will encounter her mind as an iridescent song, heroic and dense. You will feel fetched as though from some polluted river. Her glances will pass over you like folklore. Do not be afraid. This is wonder mirroring itself and breaking across your face. Endless treetops and silhouette, knowing looks of your elders. Uh, so I want to thank the Only Poems folks for all the immense work that they've been doing to help build our community, to uplift the poets, both the emergent poets and the established poets, and creating a kind of uh, beautifully curated conversation among both readers and writers alike. So thank you, Only Poems.
Thank you so much, Major. Can I say one thing? Today is September 24th. We published Major as our first poet, like our as our inaugural poet, just exactly 1 year ago, 24th September 2023. And that's just such a coincidence that this happened exactly a year after. Thank you so much, Major. I think we were so lucky and to have you as our first poet, and it really launched us into this big, beautiful world of poets. And yeah, it has been doing so well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen. Marc Chagall, we know the great painter who painted those wonderful canvases of floating people, particularly lovers. Um, this is titled Poem with a Borrowed Image from Marc Chagall. Most days I am full of spacious meadows, golden fields of yarrow and lupin, undulating in a veil among free anarchists. Most days I hold it together like the hairpins in my mother's head. Then other days, it is as though I am floating sideways in a sour aquarium. Most days I have the faith of coffin makers. Most days I sit side saddle and blow fire. Then other days it is as though I am in a line of ants disappearing into a half-eaten peach. Some days I am a scholar of tiny differences and visit museums where I am a hostage to the visionaries whose indelible dreams arrive like ecstatic breezes, especially on the fourth floor, where I stair step my way to the gilded halls and peer deep into the still lives of fruit and water pitchers and pheasants, which remind me, I'm told, of my mortality, except I would have included dishcloths and detergent next to a carcass of a rotisserie chicken. All suffering goes this way. We are poor devils made wise by the heft of our wrecks. Some days I scatter fistfuls of stars.
Didn't hear the end.
That was so cool and so beautiful, Major. Thank you for reading that one. Major, did you accidentally mute yourself?
My book did that. Um, a lot of times there's a particular phrase or a word or an idea of which the poem kind of unspools into this utterance. And this takes place in Vermont, in Addison County. And if you've driven through Vermont, you know we have these general stores. And sometimes there's no stoplights because they're very small towns. And when I first arrived, I was buying all the syrup that I could buy because I was so addicted to syrup. And then you start noticing driving rural Vermont, all the cows. And then you start noticing little stops along the way where they sell not ice cream, but creamies. And you also notice all the old farm equipment that kind of dots the landscape. But really, this poem started out of a phrase, a song, a pop song. You can probably hear it. Enchanters of Addison County. And please don't try to make sense of this. Just experience the language. We were more than gestural, close listening, the scent of manure riding its waft on the leaves off Route 22A. By nightfall, our gaze flecked like loon cries, but no one was up for turnips nor other roots, not least of which the clergy. Romanticism has its detractors, which is why we lined the road with tea-lit luminaries and fresh-cut lemons. We called it making magic. Then stormed the corners and porches of general stores, kissing whenever cars idled at four-way stop signs or sought grade A maple syrup in tin containers with painted scenes of horse-drawn farmers plowing through snow. The silhouetted rusted farm equipment gave us the laid-back heaven we so often wished, and fireflies bequeath earth stars such blink and blank and bonk-a-bonk bonk. And of course we wondered if we existed. And also, too, the cows and the ancient pastures and the white milk inside our heads, like church spires and ice cream cones. Even after all that cha cha cha, we still came out of swimming holes, shivering our hearts out. And finally, this is where'd it go here? Double major. I emerge whenever he confuses the lamp for a moon. It is then he thinks of fine bindings and ordered athenaeums. I own his face, but he watches and spends too little time behind his ears. He sees me in the mirror behind thick clouds of shaving cream, then suddenly believes in ghosts. His other selves are murals in the cave of his mind. They are speechless, yet large. They stare his wishes like summer rain and amplify his terrors like newscasters. What he doesn't know, his dreams are his father's dreams, which are his grandfather's dreams, and so on. They possessed a single wish. He knocks repeatedly on the bolted door to his imagination. Tragically, he believes he can mend his wounds with his poetry, and thus I am his most loyal critic. He trots me out like a police dog. He calls out thirst for pads and pencils, destiny. Our voices come together like two wings of a butterfly. On occasion, he closes his eyes and sees me. I am negative capability, the test to all men are created equal. We are likely to dance at weddings against my will. He pulled out the same moves writing this poem, a smooth shimmy and a hop. This page is a kind of looking glass, making strange whatever stone carvings he installed along the narrow road to his interior. I suffer in silence, wedded to his convictions. He would like to tell you the truth about love, but we are going to bed. To bed. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Major. I suppose that these poems were from Razzle Dazzle, um, which is so brilliantly titled. I love that title so much. It came out last year around this time. Norton put it out, and we urge you to check it out. And it's 2 decades worth of work, worth of Major's poetry collected, selected, I should say, uh, into a beautiful, beautiful book titled Razzle Dazzle.
Like elected.
Yeah, Razzle Dazzle. And again, I also want to thank you, Major, for the Slowdown show, which is like part of many of our lives, I imagine. So many of us spend our mornings listening, and while we're on the walk, just listen to your soothing voice. Would you, would you say, would you do your introduction? That is just so cool. I'm Major Jackson, and this is the slow. You do it so slowly and beautifully.
I would have to go off screen to replicate the experience of your listening in the morning or in the evening. Let me just say it's a great honor to host that show. And eventually we'll have a new show. But if you haven't listened, let me plug. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah,
And please do subscribe to the Slowdown.
yeah.
And we've had several people in this room and our featured reader today, and very happy to serve as ambassador of sorts. So thank you.
Thank you, Major. Thank you so much. Uh, Now let's have Kinsale over and read from her book, uh, which won the National Poetry Series Award, right, Kinsale? Last year, and the book just came out. It's called The Sky Was Once a Blanket. Is That did I say that right?
I was once a dark blanket. Yes.
Was a dark blanket. Uh, the stage is yours, Kinsale.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and so awesome hearing Major do his poet voice because I usually hear him in workshop. So it's so awesome to be able to read with him. And he's seen some, of my early pieces when I was figuring out this collection and was there to blurb it and has just been such an amazing support and mentor. So thank you, Major. And yeah, I'm in Nashville now. So it's, I think, very fitting that this book is so centered on music. So the book is The Sky Was Once a Dark Blanket. It just came out just over a week ago. I'm pasting the link because it's actually sold out in some places. So you have to purchase from the University of Georgia Press website. So I'm just going to put that in the chat. And I'm going to read the first couple poems of the collection and then a few fun ones. This collection is in 4 parts, and the aesthetics of the collection are really informed by Diné or Navajo aesthetics and poetics. I was reading a lot of Navajo poets when I was writing this collection, and I was doing also a lot of research for my thesis, which was about indigenous feminisms and ethnomusicology and poetics of the 20th century. And I entered the space of the book like I entered the world, which was my earliest memories are of people talking to me, telling me stories, and hearing music and moving through landscapes, listening to stories and music. I was just doing an interview the other day, and we talked about how cars and trains appear in this collection so much, not only because trains like dominate the infrastructure of the Southwest and have, they are the effects of settler colonialism that remain there, but also the car, a vehicle moving through places in a space where stories can be told and should be told to mark certain landmarks or chart a familial history. So there's a lot of love and there's a lot of music in this collection, which I hope you'll hear a little bit of when I read. So I'm going to start with the introductory poem, which is Spangled, and then I'll move through the first few poems, which are about Mildred Bailey, who was a native jazz singer in the early 20th century. She was from the Coeur d'Alene Reservation in the Northwest, and she moved to New York as a jazz singer. Her brother ended up singing with a couple famous jazz singers. He was part of the Rhythm Boys, and Mildred Bailey was an early friend of Louis Armstrong, like a lot of very famous jazz musicians before they actually got big. But the sound, there was so much crossover happening. They were it's just incredible to think of the conversations they must have been having. And her, as a mixed Native woman in a place like New York at that time, like right after the Harlem Renaissance, and singing in this club called the Blue Angel. I like to think of songs and music as a portal for memory. It's an access point that people can enter through. Um, so that's a little bit about Mildred Bailey. Lily Gladstone will be playing her in a biopic that hopefully will come out in a few years. So it's my dream that, she becomes more a figure in the public consciousness. Spangled. Enough about you. Airwaves in bloom, mouthpiece on fire. I must sing the hum of the yucca and icy heartbeat of river. I must sing our grandparents' blues, knocked down in the grasses and thick in the farmhouse. Oh, like Jimmy's guitar, I must sing. Dirty, sing blister, let the sound rip the sky. Rush of birds spooked from deep in our throats. Our song, one. For Mildred Bailey in 3 parts. The voice glides from the turntable, guiding him out of the kitchen, out of the city, to his father's front porch on the reservation. No mouthpiece, no anthropologist, No audience except the trees, brick of earth, the clay wide body receiving soft sounds of birds, applause. It was spring when he first heard the sound of wings in the city. The door of a New York club swung open on East 55th. Miss Mildred and her wide voice rivering the smoke. Her lips heartberry red in the lights. Lenape Hoking heaving towards a sound beneath the pavement. And who remembers Mildred Bailey? She had a light voice, clear and steady. She loved Bessie Smith. She had an Indian mother. Glimmering with the 3 rhythm boys, 17, she was on her own. I wanted to forget you. In LA, Bing Crosby to the scene. Under the law, she's not a human being. Oh, rocking chair lady, what land do you reach when you sing of home? Lover, come back. Her voice blew smoke. Lover, come back to me. Dead at 44. The sky was blue and high above. In New York, all train tracks lead away from Georgia. The moon was new, and so was love. Xylophonist, warm instrument. Everyone caught their breath and slept. This eager heart of mine was singing. Crossing New York nightclubs till her death. What color is the river? It's so quiet in this lonely pantheon. Lover, where can you be? Kitchen table, or when Mildred Bailey sings. Gramophones were weapons, swallowing the dying songs. Voices are still muted in the dust bowl of those English libraries. But her voice is clear as the Chattahoochee, wide and glittering, breaching the shadows of the Blue Angel. Oh, winged music, red tongue notes on 55th, where red boys in strange cities once stopped dead and dreamed of Georgia again. Instruments of their fathers, forefathers, and further. Her angel voice brings them home to Cherokee, the whooping crane. She lets her sons fumble back, led by soft sonata and the bird tracks. Thank you. That's what I'm going to read from the first section. So there's some song lyrics in there. There's a little jazz sensibility. So I like that as a little introduction to the collection. Okay, I'm going to read some of the later poems, starting with Creation Story Blues, which is the poem that the title comes from. Creation Story Blues. An urban Indian belongs to the city and cities belong to the earth. Tommy Orange. This is a desert like any other. Towers like cacti suck water from the sky. Aloes shadow the cold dark if the Santa Anas blow in early. Rivers are scarce. The A-line, thin blue vein, spits us out at Long Beach, so we drive everywhere instead. I ask you questions from the passenger side because I love to watch you stitch the world together. It's all the same, you say. This place is a burial ground. Ash curls across the 101 as fire claims a row of palms. You remind me that this city is homeland too, though it burns more often. So we speak kindly to the land when we can. Recognize the hills sloping like arroyo banks, the winding highways carved like canyons. The sky was once a dark blanket. Your lips point to the lights shivering downtown. Almost stars, they spiral, startlingly bright through the windshield.
The last 8 years, I don't talk about conversations I have with people, but back to the grandstand. This is the
Coyote, Oh no, it's okay. I'll keep going. Coyote threw a basket of stars to shatter the black into brilliance. Tonight, the cars are white fast comets slicing back and forth across this concrete body. Do the ghosts, too, feel comforted in the haze as you sing me the birth of the Milky Way? Thank you. We'll go a little silly. There's some silliness in here. Some silliness. This is Theme for the Nautical Cowboy, which is kind of a poem that messes with the weirdness of time and space in the Southwest. Everything gets really weird because the whole Southwest, the whole desert used to be an ocean. And moving through those landscapes, you're really aware of that because one, there's all these like places you can pull off and see fossils. You can see, trilobites. There's things you can see in the rocks, the layers. Time is very visual there. Just like in a poem, you're building, something through time and space. You're reaching through something like that. What can you access and what gets weird when you get into that kind of like cosmic realm of the Southwest? And there's also, a lot of images of music and I was thinking of George Strait. I was like, how can I put George Strait in a poem and then make it kind of weird? So this is that poem. My mother wouldn't let me go to the rodeo when I was young, so I jet off with my girl in her truck to a George Strait song. It's in our cosmology to chase the tails of dogs over the horizon. The sky stretches, map of strange stars. I list the star signs of my exes, none of them from Texas. We cheers our Baja blasts. Almost all sacred things are blue. Baby blue, baby blue. You joke you'll never date a white boy. You sing a love song to shit straight hair and nighttime eyes. The compass needle stays glued to the moon. I catch your eyes in every mirror. There was once a prehistoric ocean all around us, even whales. We puff out the great swimming shapes of their bodies. This layer of rock, trilobites, this layer, some ancient eel. How small we are, how funny. Massive fish ghosts vibrate to George Strait. Time is read backwards in the rock body, oldest to the top, magma pushing what's fresh to the surface. Your hand skims the deep blue sandstone, these long cooled shells, teardrop, turquoise sliver of horizon, the creeping river invisible in the dark. Here's to you, ancient and alive. The sky stretches, full of old and older ghosts, our once and forever waiting pool. Thank you so much. Next, I'm going to read I'm going to read a black cat poem. My cat's in the room behind me. But I love black cats. My cat's a Siamese, but I love black cats. And there was one outside my mom's apartment, actually in Vermont, which made me think of it. And I thought about I love Stevie Nicks. I love like witchy women. And I love thinking about femininity in cats basically. And um there's a lot of taboos in my culture, and my mom's here. She's like, yep, yep, yep. But black cats are not one of them. And I love them. So I thought it's always, it's not a good sign to me when I see one. Song for the black cat outside my mother's apartment. We know what it is to not be wanted when our bodies are taboo. Night limbs, how our eyes swallow everything. When I was brought into the world, I looked back. The trees were heavy with dark. They say a wicked woman walks bad luck. What makes a wicked woman? Irises green with want, barbed tongues to catch what's coming. I want to move through the trees as you do. Four palms flush to the earth. Dark river with two wild torches in a corner. Living shadow, the same color as forgetting. How many lives can I hold? in each chamber of my heart. Thank you.
That is such an unforgettable poem, Kinsale. I
Thank
still
you.
like almost in its entirety. It's beautiful.
Yes, people love that one on Only Poems.
Yeah, that's just beautiful. Yeah, it's such a haunting poem, really.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna read one. Well, I'm supposed to be taking up a little more time. I always go a little fast. So I'll do two more. We will do I always save Ancestors' Wildest Dream for last. So we'll do Relocation. Which is I love Salt Lake City. It is a very strange city. And I wish I would probably write like a series of poems about Salt Lake, but um it's in the same state as where my maternal family comes from, but it has a very long history of Mormon communities being there, and Mormons have a very strange history with Navajos, and navigating those spaces is interesting to say the least. I think that's where poetry comes in and can really provide a sense of scale and observation and humor when talking about these things. So this is called Relocation. The re is in parentheses. Salt Lake City boasts white tabernacles, half-filled parks, a mineral highway, and archives so vast they fill mountainsides. One summer, we researched our family genealogy there, surrounded by giddy Mormons. Their screens flickered with famous relatives, a Custer, Jackson, Theodore, Kit. Nothing came up on ours. So we went and got burgers at a place that sold no liquor. The burgers were okay, but we shared our shakes and secret smiles and imagined ourselves renegades in that room. Old West portrait. An Indian girl on the run with no records and no documents. Her wind-burned father clutching his sarsaparilla. We had infiltrated the saloon and city hall. I locked eyes in the burger joint with the confidence of a pistol whipper. The room stirred. It smelled of grass and gun smoke. I would not be moved again. Thank you. And then I'm going to end this reading with Ancestors' Wildest Dreams. And this was my first poem that was in Poetry Magazine. So I love this poem. And it is towards the end of the collection. And it ends on a note that I think is very joyous and disruptive. This book does. So Ancestors' Wildest Dreams. Oh, and it's a note for non-Navajo speakers or non-Navajo people. There isn't a word for sorry or apology in Navajo, which is really interesting coming into the language, like what there is or is not language for. So that's a pretty direct reference that I think helps you understand the poem, and what you should or shouldn't apologize for. Ancestors' Wildest Dreams. Ancestors' wildest dreams are drunk on the sticky floor of a Denny's, texting grandma ayo aninishne and crying in the same hot breath about not knowing the right word for apology if one exists. Keyboard smashing, resilience, 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 resilience as we delete Instagram so we don't have to see people out sacreding each other. Maybe we're only sovereign in bed sometimes, drowning in the dark and in the soft pools of their eyes, living off the hard tack of thighs, moving to an MCR mixtape we froth Ancestors' sleep paralysis demon caught in cold sweat and skipped therapy, untangling our bodies from sheets, always untangling ourselves out from under somewhere. Fractals left in corners, under juniper berry branches. Do we even remember how Grandma baked her pies? The corn stalks stretched higher than holy people that year, and we came home buzzed on lemonade and an auntie's laughter. Everyone is always talking about an ancestor that is or isn't pleased, but I saw a strawberry moon tonight rising. I learned the word in my language for laugh. We found it together. Dlo, 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 dlo. We eat it. We setting spray it to the page. Thank you so much. That'll be my last poem. And I tried to pick from different sections of the collection. So I hope you enjoy that little preview, and I hope that you'll have the book in your hands one day. Thank
Fucking
you.
hell, that was one beautiful way of telling people that if you don't have the book in your hand, then you're missing out, Kinsale. That was so brilliant. Thank you. Uh, so we usually do like a couple of questions at the end of this. I know Major has to leave in like 13 minutes, so let's start and let's be quicker than we usually are. I usually ask about like if you have a writing routine. Kinsale, since you are on the screen, why don't you tell us if you have a writing routine, like what's your process like the most basic, simple question.
Yeah, I'm a night writer. I feel like writers like to know if you write in the morning, you write at night. I write at
Absolutely.
night. Yeah, I'm the most productive at night. I think that's because I have I just like when it feels like the rest of the world is asleep or not paying attention, and I feel like I can be at my most honest at night.
Hmm.
I am a huge media fan, so like movies, books, like I'll try to absorb everything I can. And if I feel really inspired by a current interest, right now it's the Harvey houses. I'm writing a lot about Fred Harvey and the railroads. And I tend to have like a little fixation. And there will be, I think, a lull in the writing and the poetry, but something I think sometimes when I feel myself really falling in love with a subject or a memory pops up, I'll get very focused and transfixed on trying to capture
Right.
what it is that is pulling me in. Um, so that to me, I think is my process. And then of course, I mean, I'm in graduate school, so I'm like my other process is Major has poems due
Right.
every week, so I
Right.
have to I have to write. But I think with that, it's being aware of the form. Usually, it's like a form assignment and seeing what can best be in conversation with the form. So, for example, like Terzarima, which is like this very
Mhm.
complicated rhyming form that Dante uses in the Inferno. I wrote a terzarima a few weeks ago that was braiding together a lot of different stories and histories that I think would be honestly, I think it was easier for me to write in that form about them because they were able to speak to each other through slant rhyme, through exact rhyme, through positioning in the poem, the landscape of the poem. So yeah, those are like
Yeah.
my three different processes.
Yeah. I love working with forms myself for the same reason. And also, who are we if not for our obsessions, especially as writers and poets? Major, for you, similar, the same question, but um, we all know how busy you are, and especially running a program and then being a podcast host for like a everyday podcast. How do you make time for writing? I already struggle, so I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, I have a clone. His name is Major 2.0, and
Double
there's
major.
Major 3.0. Um, I'm happy we start talking about form there because lately I've been thinking about we often talk about form as generative, and we haven't yet articulated how form there's a caretaking aspect to form,
Hmm.
which is to say when you step inside that frame, sometimes it can be quite alienating, but depending on the project or subject matter, it can be somewhere where your stories can land in such a way that on one hand, you're dealing with the demands of storytelling or narrative, or you're dealing with the demands of the pinch of an emotion. But then the form is there. You're also paying attention to meeting the constraints. And so I think the interplay between those two creates this fantastic tension, but also a kind of a way to usher the material along. If it were not for my group of fellow poets who have made me accountable to writing, I think I would be kind of really saddened. I mean, I have a group that meets Saturday where we don't write poems, but we discuss poems, and that is just as crucial. 1 hour a week, we all show up from our various parts of the world. Literally, people are dialing in just as they're about to go to bed. But then there's a Monday group, and we took a hiatus over the summer, but we just started back. And I was recently telling a friend, we call it an accountability group, but really it's something more sacred. It truly is a sacred gathering. The poems are but they return me to what gave me joy in the first place. And it's great to be reminded of that. During that hour, my process is to put the pen down and try not to lift it up as much as possible. Like I give myself I give myself 4 times to lift the poem up within that hour. So it really does become this stream of conscious. Where can it go? Very, very raw material that is later, much later, in fact, reread and shaped into something that I feel is hopefully worthy of a reader's attention.
I love that. Um, as a poet, Major, you even and also Kinsale, and I think myself too, we realize how important community is, and you touched on that. And your work is a testament to that, and so is Kinsale's. Kinsale, would you speak a little about the Indian Book Club that you direct?
Yeah, Indian Girls Book Club. So that was born out of community. We seek to uplift Native literature on every level, and that was born from like several years of doing work in the community, in tribal communities across the United States, which I personally was doing poetry workshops that started when I was in high school as a national student poet. And we just started making all these genuine connections with educators and librarians, tribal librarians, and a way to loop that all together was working with my friends, peers who are, mostly also college students and grad students who are interested in storytelling and teaching. We I was just leveraging grants at first to send out free books by Native authors to community members. And I think also when it was starting off and we got a lot of attention, it was realizing that there really is a gap, in the industry in terms of, Native peoples do not see themselves represented as authors, but also as publishers, in
Right.
promoting Native literature. Their stereotypes prevail very heavily that are informed by not understanding Native people at all and the lack of visibility. But going beyond that, on a structural level, how could we help communities, teach their students what are the resources they already have there? What are like the resources we can connect them with? How can we empower local Native authors? And so we'll like consult with literary festivals sometimes and connect them with Native writers and people in their area that they can work with. But above anything, I think it's about community. So having once a month a space where we can come together and do a poetry workshop online, no matter where you are. A lot of us now have like the infrastructure and the ability to meet online because of, the pandemic. There had to be adjustments made in a lot of communities. And that was also a result of community mutual aid was, getting Wi-Fi to more remote areas. But yeah, it's like on every level, how can we support the next generations of Native storytellers as well? And for somebody who I wish that I had that when I was a kid, I probably would have started writing a lot earlier. Um, how can we just get people excited about it and know that there is a place for them in the literary world? And beyond that, like, how can we continue to disrupt it? How can we continue to make change? How can we continue to radically support each other when it seems like people want, just one or two
Yeah,
natives to represent native
right.
literature,
Yes. Thank you so much for doing this, Kinsale. I appreciate that so much. It's all of what you said is like resonates so completely with Only Poems ethos as well. This is our goal, and this is exactly what we're trying to do here as well. I appreciate it so much. Okay, so final thing, Major, before we let you go, just throw some advice at us. Uh, Recently, all our interviews accompany that question, but you were our first poet, and we did not know the techniques of interview when we did our interview with you. So we didn't ask you this, but what is something that you like to tell, your students or just poets in general? What is your advice regarding this?
Um, Give your poems, make little chapbooks, and don't wait for the book, but create little chapbooks and give them to family and friends so that you can normalize poetry in their lives and not as something that's specialized that
Wow,
you do. And the more we can do that, the more we can start expecting um, there's a great regard for literature. I don't want to slam, but definitely we can do more to widen and share that joy. And we all know that sometimes a poem will kind of land in someone's life when they least expect it. And I think in the gift giving economy, that happens even more frequently. Yeah.
that's beautiful. Thank you. I appreciate that so much. Thank you so much, Major, for reading
Thank
for us.
you.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much. You have a good rest of your night.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thank you all.
Kinsale, the same question to you now. If you feel too um, humble to say it, like we can phrase it like we did for our interview. Like, what is some of the best advice you've received so far in your career? And you've been, I did not realize this until just few days, like just until we published you, that you've been doing this for a long time. So I think you have the authority to give advice. So go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Nobody look up my work from before when I was 19 though, because I don't, that's embarrassing. Um, I would say, well, yeah, two things. The first one was it was from other Native writers, which was don't be afraid to write about what is important to you. And that seems really simple, but I think it's really easy to feel boxed in, especially when you have a marginalized identity. Um, and you're often tokenized in spaces. You can feel pressured to write a certain way, but anything you write, like for me, this was like something someone said was anything you write is like native poetry. Like it doesn't matter. You can write about Hello Kitty and like it has meaning and it will connect with people. Writing about the things that you nerd out with too. I have a poem with Hello Kitty. That's why I mentioned that. Um, and then I think second, I guess advice would just be to read as widely as you can and look at who the writers that you love, like look at who they're reading as well. Um, just, you know, try to read beyond the writers that you hold in your personal canon. And I think too is like, look to your local landscapes, like see who is writing locally and go to like local events. And those can be some of the most electrifying readings that you'll ever go to. And those aren't names that you would normally, just see in a big reading lineup or something. But I think that is something as well, like getting really invested in your local poetry scene is something that can be really inspiring. Um, and you also will be putting yourself outside of your own comfort zone. So, and I say this as someone who's like a little introverted when it comes to events and stuff, but something that my friends here will get us to do. And that I think lends really well to like getting outside of my own vocabulary as a writer, getting outside my own head, especially when I feel like I've hit a wall. Um, yeah, I feel like that's got to be the
Yeah,
best.
no, that is so helpful. Someone like me always needs to hear this, that you want to step out of your comfort zone, you know, basically. Um, Thanks so much, Kinsale. I appreciate this so much. One question, I always feel silly asking this, but I do it in each reading now. If you could, like, mostly, so the first time I asked this because I wanted to answer it for myself. And since then, I've been answering it every time. Like, who would be one poet? Like, if you could be any other poet apart from yourself, who would that be? The answer for me is very clear for me. It's Leonard Cohen. And I always mention it. People who attend these readings every time they know it. Now they're bored of me telling them the same thing. But I say it because even if there's just one new person who hasn't attended a reading before, I want to tell them that I love Leonard Cohen. So do you have anybody like that that, you know?
Oh, I want to be Stevie Nicks so bad. I think she counts. I want to be Stevie Nicks so bad. But in all reality, Natalie Diaz is like,
Yeah,
she's it. Yeah,
I love that.
she's
Yeah,
amazing. Just
she
like beyond like the work
her
she does on page, the way she talks about poetry and pressures poetry and the way she carries language and breaks it open is just
Yeah, I
so
hear you.
dazzling
Her
and
work has been so important to Shannon and I both, for a long time. Yeah, and I also love that you answered it like straight away. You did not hesitate. A bunch of us also not, we're like, oh, we don't want to be anybody else. I'd certainly do. I'm glad to
Yeah, I'm like, are you
know.
kidding me? One, love would love
Exactly.
to be Stevie Nicks during the Rumors album. Like, I would have loved to know what was going on
Right.
then. Such a prolific period. Also, Natalie Diaz. Like,
Love
yeah.
that. Thank you so much, Kinsale. This is the end of this. And thank you, everybody, for coming, especially those of you who make time every time. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you for giving us so much love to Only Poems. Uh, we see you, we read your cover letters. We appreciate you so much. And once again, Kinsale, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you so much. And thank you to
Yes.
everyone. And thank you to Only Poems for, yeah, all the awesome work you guys do. I love
And
it. And the website is beautiful. If you haven't seen the website, everyone.
thank you. Kinsale's new book is called The Sky Was Once a Dark Blanket, and that's a beautiful title. And what a colorful, beautiful cover. I mean,
I know.
they don't make covers like that anymore.
I know. It is. I know when I saw it, my mom's here. I showed it. I like screamed. I was like, "It's perfect! It's perfect!" I do. I love the cover.
Thank you, Mom, for coming. Cheers. Bye bye, you all. Have a good rest of the night.